February 1933. New York City was freezing, but Harlem was burning. On a bitter Valentine's Day morning, a young man named Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson walked straight into a place no one walked out of alive. By sunrise, 11 men would be carried away. One would walk free, and an entire criminal empire would quietly retreat from Harlem forever. But before we get to that night, you need to understand why it happened. Because this wasn't just an ambush. It was a declaration of war. And Bumpy Johnson was never supposed to survive it. In 1933, Harlem wasn't the glamorous postcard people remember. The music was still there. The jazz clubs still glowed at night, but beneath the sound of trumpets and laughter, desperation ruled the streets. The Great Depression had crushed the neighborhood. Jobs vanished, food was scarce, and hope became something people were willing to gamble on. That's where the numbers game came in. An illegal lottery, a few coins placed on a dream. Win, and you could eat for a week. Lose, and life went on like it always had. In Harlem, the numbers weren't just gambling, they were survival. And controlling that game meant controlling Harlem. For years, the numbers were ruled by a woman few outsiders dared challenge, Madame Stephanie Street Claire. Sharp, fearless, and wealthy in a time when most people had nothing. She didn't rule with brute force. She ruled with loyalty. And when loyalty failed, she had Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy wasn't like other enforcers. He didn't talk much, didn't threaten loudly, didn't kill unless it mattered. He read books most gangsters couldn't pronounce. Philosophy, poetry, Shakespeare. And that made him dangerous. Because Bumpy understood something most criminals never did. Fear fades. Respect doesn't. When numbers runners were robbed, Bumpy retrieved the money. When crooked cops shook down black businesses, their careers suddenly collapsed. Not always violently, sometimes quietly, permanently. Harlem trusted him, and that trust made someone else nervous. That someone was Dutch Schultz, a ruthless mob boss from the Bronx, rich from bootlegging, violent by reputation, responsible for dozens of murders. Dutch had never accepted no as an answer. But Prohibition was ending, and Dutch needed a new source of income. So he looked south. He saw Harlem's numbers, money flowing like a river, and he decided he wanted every drop of it. There was only one problem. Harlem already belonged to someone else. In January 1933, Dutch sent representatives into Harlem. They sat across from Madame Street Claire and delivered a simple message: pay tribute or lose everything. Madame Street Claire didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She just told them to leave. When the men looked at Bumpy for confirmation, he didn't blink. He just stared. That stare followed them all the way back to the Bronx. And when Dutch Schultz heard what happened, something inside him snapped. A black woman had rejected him. Her enforcer had intimidated his men without saying a word. Dutch didn't just want control anymore. He wanted an example. Dutch decided Bumpy Johnson had to die. Not quietly, not cleanly, publicly, brutally. The kind of death that makes an entire neighborhood fall in line. And he chose the date carefully. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Early that morning, Bumpy received word that something was wrong. Dutch's men were moving near one of the main counting houses. Bumpy decided to investigate himself. Alone. Some say that was a mistake. Others believe Bumpy already knew exactly what was waiting for him. The place was a basement beneath a private after-hours club, not the famous Cotton Club tourists talked about. This was a backroom spot where real business happened. Cards, liquor, debts, violence. One narrow staircase, no windows, no witnesses. Perfect. As Bumpy stepped down the stairs, the door closed behind him, and then the silence broke. Metal clicked. One gun, then another, then another. 12 men emerged from the shadows. Professional killers, names whispered on the streets. Men who didn't miss. Their leader stepped forward and smiled. Dutch sends his regards. Bumpy didn't move. He looked around slowly, counted them. 12. Then he looked back at the man in front of him. That's everyone? The smile disappeared. Here's what most people don't understand about moments like this. They're not about strength. They're about control. And Bumpy Johnson controlled the room. The men expected begging, fear, panic. Instead, they got calm. "You got a few seconds," one of them said, raising his gun. Bumpy tilted his head. "You're already dead," the man said. Bumpy replied quietly, "You think I came unprepared?" The room shifted. Doubt entered the air. Someone glanced at the stairs. Someone else tightened their grip. And hesitation is lethal. What happened next became legend. Bumpy didn't reach for a gun. He reached up. One strike. The hanging light exploded. Darkness swallowed the room. And then chaos erupted. Gunfire tore through the dark. Men shouted, screamed, fired at shadows. Orders were given and ignored. Panic fed on panic. But Bumpy moved differently. He knew the room. Every table, every crate, every step. He didn't fire wildly. He didn't waste bullets. He used hands, elbows. Surprise. Men fell, some from blows, some from friendly fire. Minutes stretched like hours. Then, silence. When the basement door finally opened, light spilled over bodies scattered across the floor. A leve, men down, broken, bleeding, unconscious, and one survivor, shaking, alive only because Bumpy wanted him alive. Bumpy Johnson was gone. The survivor crawled out into the street as the sun rose. Blood soaked his clothes. He bribed a cab driver with cash pulled from his jacket. Destination: the Bronx, Dutch Schultz's headquarters. Dutch was eating breakfast when the door opened. He looked up and froze. "Where are the others?" The survivor couldn't speak at first. "They're gone," he finally whispered. Dutch stood slowly. "How?" The man reached into his coat and placed something on the table. A playing card. An Ace of Spades. Stained red. "He said Harlem isn't for sale," the man gasped. "And if you send more men, send more cards." The room went silent. Everyone waited for Dutch to explode. Instead, he laughed softly, not amused, impressed. He stared at the card for a long moment. Then he burned it. "We're done with Harlem," he said. And just like that, the war ended. Years later, rumors surfaced that Bumpy wasn't truly alone, that the basement had been sealed from the outside, that he could have killed all of them, but chose not to. Because humiliation ends wars faster than bloodshed. What we know for certain is this. After that night, Dutch Schultz never challenged Harlem again, and Bumpy Johnson became something no one could touch. Not because he was the most violent, but because he understood power. February 14th, 1933. 12 men walked in, 1 walked out, and Harlem was never the same again. If you felt that story, stay with us. Because these are the moments history tried to bury, and legends are